Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Spin Cycle podcast talking to the personalities, the groups, and the brands that make the UK and London just an incredible place to be a cyclist. Today, we've got quite a special guest with us, longtime friend of ours, someone that no doubt the London scene definitely knows. And I also think someone that's doing some really incredible work, especially around the mental health side. It's Ben May. Ben May, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
So Ben, obviously we look to break the podcast into three sections, right? So the first one is getting to know you, who are you as a person. The second one is who are your things, so we can talk about the new normal and some of the incredible work that you do around grief counselling, mental health, and congratulations, by the way, on 1,000 meetings crossed. We're recording this in early or mid-December, but congrats on that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's a reasonable milestone, I believe.
And then the third section will do the classic Q&A, white bib, short agenda, etc., etc., etc. So Ben, to start us off, maybe you tell the listeners, the viewers, who are you and maybe how you got into cycling.
Sorry, one of my cats has just decided to join me at that exact moment, which is very good of him. So I'm Ben. I got into cycling. When did I get into cycling? I think I was 31 when I got into cycling. So my dad had been sick in 2015 and into 2016. He died in 2016.
Sorry. And
when he did, I did the classic thing that I always do, which is, I was like, yeah, I'm going to raise money. And everyone was like, well, how are you going to raise money? So I'll work it out. I'll ride a bike or something. And at the time, I was still a 20-a-day smoker. I still drank a bit, but not much anymore. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't ridden a geared bike in about 20 years. I had no real understanding of cycling apart from commuting every now and then on a single speed.
Yeah.
I had pretty good fitness. I played a lot of sport when I was a kid and went to the gym sort of 5-6 days a week at that point. But yeah, cycling was not something that I knew a lot about. And then people started saying, well, where are you going to ride this bike, this fictional bike that you're going to get? I was like, I'll do something easy, like I'll ride from John O'Groats to Southampton.
Okay.
And so for the next couple of months, I just walked around telling everyone that, I'm going to ride from John O'Groats to Southampton. And so my dad died in the August, and I agreed that I would return to his home by the 31st of July the following year.
Yeah.
And in the February, I decided to Google how far it was. And I realised how much of an idiot I was at about that point.
Okay.
When did the panic start?
I have. Do you know what? My mum, when the day that I went and got my GCSE results,
right,
my stepdad stood in the driveway with me outside his and my mum's house. And I was smoking a cigarette before he went off to work. And he said to me, how do you think you've got on? Did you do any revision? This is like on the day of me getting my results. So it was a bit of a wasted question. Yeah, what does it matter anyway? But I genuinely, and my mum still tells people this story because she thinks it's so ridiculous. And actually it is so ridiculous, but it speaks volumes of how I was walking around saying what I was saying about doing this cycling challenge. I actually said to my stepdad, I didn't revise. No, I've relied completely on my natural talent and ability. And
that's such an incredible 16-year-old GCSE.
I'm invincible.
Don't worry about it. I've done it. I've got it covered, mate.
Yeah, I got 2 C's.
Okay.
That was it.
Fair enough.
I got 2 C's and quite a few ungraded. So I obviously nailed that. But this same confidence, unfortunately, still, was still very present in me when by the time I was 30, 31. And so, I Googled it and I didn't really think much of it. I ended up borrowing a bike off of a customer, a client of mine. You know, I've been in the hairdressing industry now for 21 years, and I was really fortunate. This customer of mine said, "Yeah, I've got a bike," and I picked it up in the March. So again, not really ridden the bike, still smoking 20 a day. It was the middle of March by this point. I just bought a pair of bib shorts. That was it. You know, I didn't even have a bike. And then eventually I picked it up, and it was this old steel touring bike. It was heavy, and it still had the panniers on, and these really big, heavy, you know, mud guards.
Did it have a dynamo light as well, potentially?
No, it was an undesirable bike to try and ride this distance on. And I ended up taking it to my friend's shop. He took the mud guards off for me and took the panniers off for me. And I remember doing the first ride. I was living in Holloway at the time, just by the Emirates. And I rode from my house to Richmond Park. I had 2 laps of Richmond Park, and then I rode home from Holloway. And it was probably about 65, 70 kilometres in total.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Having never ridden a road bike, you know, as well ever really. And I just went and did a 65, 70k ride, and I was like, oh, okay, right. Next day, got up and went and did another ride. And within about 3 weeks, I bought my first road bike. I, you know, realised that I really like this sport. It's quite good, isn't it? And so that was the end of March, and by the end of April, I did my first 300-kilometre day.
Shit.
Yeah, without really thinking about it, I just knew that I had to learn to ride quite far. And I was doing, by May, I was doing 500-600k weeks, just back to back.
Wow.
Without really resting, and going out and doing 250, 300k, you know, single day on a weekend, and then backing it up with like another 100 miles, 160k the next day. So yeah, I just immediately sort of could ride a bike. I quit smoking. Like a month in, I was like, oh, I'll quit smoking for now because I'm pretty certain I need to go faster.
Yeah.
Really annoyed actually, because I never had, you know, when people talk about quitting smoking and they talk about the coughing up all of the stuff, and I never had any of that. I was really irked by that actually. I'm still, you know, I smoked for 17, 18 years. I still feel really shortchanged.
I got
Don't
that.
have a good story.
I got that. It happened to me.
Yeah, you had that.
Yeah, so my daughter was born in April of 2022. So she's, just over a year and a half. And I was still pretty fit. I had a 50 beats a minute heart rate, resting rate. I was cycling all the time. And what actually happened with me was it got to the January. So my daughter was due in 4 months, and my wife said to me, in her incredibly French way, she said, well, you're not going to be one of those fucking guys that smokes until I give birth and then you just quit, right? Because that's not great. It's essentially you've just decided that's not, you know. So I was like, actually, do you know what? You make quite a good point that what the hell am I doing? I'm just going to quit. And immediately, within about 3 weeks, it no longer hurt to go to like 180, 170. And then, I properly coughed it all up. It started like a bit slow. Like my immune system started kicking in, start getting on the tube, and I could smell like the braking. You know what the tube smells like? That weird metallic smell?
Yeah.
Never smelt that before. I lived in London for 12 years. Never smelt the smell of the tube. Got that. And then I was like, started coughing up. All this crap came up. I was like, I had the flu for a week. And then I was like, holy shit, this is how normal people feel. Don't get me wrong. I still really enjoy the vapes, but the cigarette part, I think it's cleared itself. It's completely different.
Yeah, I never had that. I'm still like I say, I'm still annoyed that I never had that, because I wanted a reason to quit. Like I wanted, and it really. So I remember when my dad was diagnosed. My dad died from a brain tumor, and when he was diagnosed, they said, we want to find out where the cancer's coming from, so we're going to bring you in and do a full body scan. My stepmom was adamant that he had lung cancer because he had been smoking for 40 years.
Yeah.
And when they did the scan, they told him he had the lungs of a non-smoker.
Wow.
Yeah. And the last thing he ever tried to do actually was stand up to go for a fag, bless him. He couldn't open his eyes. He couldn't talk to you for months and months and months, but he could still shuffle to the back door for 4 fags a day. Like, it was just like, kudos to him for the effort. It was the only thing he did. But like, yeah. So I'm convinced that genetically, you know, annoyingly, like my lungs have always been okay. But yeah, you know, as I say, I was kind of riding these long weeks and not really thinking about it, and then sat down to plot a route. And John O'Groat's a really long way away. I don't know if either of you have ever been.
No.
My family's from Scotland, and I've never taken my wife. But John O'Groat is really fucking far. Like, even far of it being in Scotland.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dumb how far away it is. With like for the fact that there is like one road that takes you from Inverness all the way to John O'Groat, and you've got no choice. You ride on it and you drive on it, and like there's not like that's it. Right? Yeah. And you know, for anyone listening who has done that ride, I was doing it the other way around. So we drove up. Thinking back, it's ridiculous. We drove up on the Sunday morning. And we got to John O'Groat's, myself and my brother, and we had a bit of food and went to bed. I rode the bike up and down the road to make sure it was okay. And then the next morning I got up and rode to Inverness. And he was in the car, just driving a bit ahead of me. And, you know, he was useless. My brother was useless, and he was genuine.
Shout out Ben's.
The worst person. Like, honestly. We ended up, I did John O'Groats to Inverness day 1, Inverness to Edinburgh day 2, Edinburgh to Leeds day 3, Leeds to London day 4, and London to Southampton day 5. So it was 1,150 kilometres in 5 days.
Jeez.
That's absurd.
Like the Leeds to London and then London to Southampton. That is... Sorry, Ben, but any normal person would split that out a little bit more than that, potentially. You would, you know, just make it a bit more even.
Edinburgh to London. Edinburgh to London in 2 days. And that had, I think also as well, it was a double Everest over those 5 days as well. So it was a really, the route planning was garbage.
Did you go through like the Peak District and the like?
Yeah. Peaks, lakes, like you name it, I went through it. So dumb, like, but I'd been riding a bike for like 4 months. I had no idea, right? I had not even 4 months, like 3.5. I had no idea. I didn't realise how far it was. I didn't realise how much it would hurt. I didn't realise like any of it, you know. But there was this amazing moment where, so the cycling through Scotland from Edinburgh to Leeds, that day was hard. That was 350 kilometres. It poured with rain from the minute I rolled out of Edinburgh until probably about 50k outside of Leeds. There was a block headwind the entire day.
Really?
There's one video of me riding through the Scottish borders where it looks like I'm going up a gradient that's probably about 7 or 8%. I'm actually riding downhill. It's that hard. Like, I'm out of the saddle and I'm going full gas and I'm going nowhere. But there was this one point I climbed up this, I don't even know, like maybe 500 metre climb just outside of Leeds, you know, not far from Leeds. It was getting late in the day. And genuinely, I got to the top of this climb and I was cooked. And I got off the bike, I leant the bike up against the car and I whipped the gilet out of the car and I put it on, and my brother got out of the car and he stood up and he went, "Oh, my back is absolutely killing me. I am knackered." I grabbed my bike and I just told him to fuck off, and I just rode off down the descent. I was like, "You're just fuck off, Ryan." Honestly, it was a horrible experience. But it's that's how I got into it. It was just, you know, it's me being my unnecessarily confident self. Of course I'm going to do that. Like, I don't I'm just going to go and do that. There's no worry about that. I'm not going to think about it. And I ended up raising about $8,500 for the hospice where my dad died, which
great.
I was really happy about that. Yeah, it was good. It was good. I was really pleased. And because they were amazing when my dad died, so they deserved that support. But yeah, that is how I got into bicycling.
That's amazing. What bike did you end up buying?
Oh, I don't even know. I can't remember the name of the brand.
Ben,
it was white.
Was it a Claude Butler? Do you remember Claude Butler?
No, not really. I know of Claude Butlers because I have seen them, but I think this was still only 6 and a bit years ago.
Yeah, Claude Butler was. NJ and I would want to get into cycling, and you would. So I started cycling maybe, oh goodness me, about 14 years ago or so, when it was like properly uncool. And to get a road bike, somebody would be like, "Oh, your uncle cycles," and invariably it would be with like 20mm wheels. It would just be nobody really knew how to work on these things. Everybody's mate was a mechanic that just fixed it, and the bike of choice was the Claude Butler. And my parents, I remember saying, I was like, I'd like a bike, road bike, like my Uncle Mark. Shout out Uncle Mark if you're listening to this. He's a pilot. He's a really great guy. He rode a Claude Butler.
Do you think he is listening?
No, he's a pilot and does long haul, so he probably is not. But
I don't know if that's the reason why he's not listening.
But my parents were like, this was when like box section aluminium wheels, when you could like open Cycling Weekly, Lance's Trek Madone was in there, and Lance's Trek Madone was like 1,300 quid, and it was like £1,000 for a bike. It's never happening. Never happening. Dark ages.
Yeah.
Those were the actual dark ages.
I mean, one of my customers was in today. I won't name him, but he's a bit, he's been riding and racing for many, many years, and he was complaining today, as he often does, about the state of cycling and how expensive bikes are now. And like, it's a fair point. I mean, my second bike was an SL6,
great bike,
and that was. Yeah, fantastic. It was the oil slick one as well, if you remember that one, the one that kind of changed from green to black. Beautiful bike. And also, it was my second bike. I was so fortunate to be in a position to be able to get that. Yeah. But that was $5,500, and I thought, this is the most I'm probably ever going to pay for a bike. How wrong was I? A terrible assumption.
So after you finished the Land's End Southampton, what happened next? So
John O'Groats.
Sorry. I'll start that again because I fucked that.
Land's End sounds like it's round the corner.
Yeah. Let me start that again. I fucked that one up.
You've wrecked the whole journey.
Yeah. Let me start that again. Let's edit that one out. So after you did John O'Groats Southampton, what happened next? What turned you in from doing big distances, primarily raising money for your father's hospice? How did that change from there?
So a few months later was the first Red Bull time lapse.
Oh, yeah.
And one of my friends, not even a few months, it was like 2 months later, one of my friends got in touch and said, "Oh, do you fancy doing this?" I only had a couple of friends at the time who cycled, and I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'm really up for this. Actually, I could ride bikes for a while, a long time." So I'll give it a go. And what I learned really quickly was doing that. Firstly, that I was terrible at fueling. Secondly, that I'm awful at getting enough sleep. Like I didn't sleep a wink doing that time lapse with 3 other friends. and then the final thing was that I was desperate to ride my bike as quick as I could.
Yeah.
Like I really, really, really wanted to be as fast as the fast people doing that. And I ended up going with a friend to Dirty Weekends. Do you remember?
I
Dirty
remember
Weekend?
Dirty Weekend.
They're like they're a club set up by David Bavin.
Yep.
Lovely guy, really nice group of people. My friend Joe and I went along to their fast laps, and we met another guy called John, who's John Snell from Trash
Shout
Mile.
out John Snell.
Yeah. He's one of the founders of Trash Mile. So we met John, and that first laps I got dropped like a stone. And I was like, this is amazing. and we just kept going back, and week on week on week, it would take longer to get dropped, and you're going back to the park, and there were other days where you're like, I really just want to go and ride fast. And then in the February, one of them said, oh, we're going to go and race this race. Do you want to come? Knew nothing about bike racing, didn't understand it at all. Got a license, like a couple of nights before online. Yeah. Turned up, and it was Hog Hill, and I got dropped on the downhill off the bike. So there was like ice on the corner, and I was absolutely pranging out. Yeah. I didn't know how to corner still at this point. I wasn't comfortable riding in a group. This was like, 10, 11 months later?
Yeah.
And I got dropped on the downhill section off the line. My heart rate was like 120 on the line. And I rode for 40 minutes completely on my own. Oh. And I loved every second of it. I got lapped, and, it was, I suppose for other people, it might have been embarrassing. For me, I didn't really care. I just thought, this is great. I want to do more of this. And what I ended up doing was going away and realising that I needed to get stronger.
Nice.
And I went and rode, and I trained, and I just kept going back to the park and riding. And then at the end of that year, in the September, I went and I did a couple of races, and I think I did about three races. I managed to get my third cap.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that was, I was just completely sold on the whole idea of bike racing. And that was 2018, end of 2018.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Where are we now? 2023. Yeah. So it would have been the end of 2018.
So just over 5 years.
Yeah. So I started racing, pretty much just over 5 years ago, essentially. And yeah, that was kind of it. Like, next season, managed to get my second cat, and again, I'm not a particularly good bike racer. I'm terrible at reading a race. Absolutely awful. Like, when I was a third cat, I thought I could sit on the front and still win. Like, sit on the front for 45, 50 minutes and still win. And I couldn't. And then when I moved up to second cat, I thought I could do the same thing. I just couldn't. And I'm never going to win a bunch sprint. I never say never, but I'm 63 kilos, 64 kilos. Like, I'm not a sprinter, But there's something about racing, and there's something about training, and there's something about getting stronger that I really, really, really enjoy. And for me now, racing, I spent the last 2 seasons racing for Team London. And the cool thing has been going, like, stepping up to race NatB.
Oh, sick.
Mega.
And, I don't know what these people think of me still on the start line, but I know that I'm looking at them thinking, fuck.
Always.
And I'm here. Like, these guys are fucking quick. And, like, for a bit, I'm in that race with them. And it's turning up and going back on that start line and seeing improvements, getting better, staying in the races. When you're going out and you're racing, I don't know, 150 odd K NatB road race, and you're finishing with guys that have been racing years and years and years. they're still in their 20s. They've never been a smoker. They didn't take a significant amount of Class A drugs in their teens and 20s, and you're able to turn up and do that. It might not seem like a big achievement to some people to be finishing, 30th in a NatB road race. But for me, that's the challenge is and next season going back again and improving on those results and getting better and getting closer to those riders. And that's the challenge for me. I always want to be, whenever I do anything, I want to be the best that I can be, not for anyone else, but for me. It's my test for myself, and that's kind of what's happened with cycling. I fell in love, and I realised very quickly that if I worked hard, and I think this might be the working class part of me as well, right? I grew up really working class. But if you work hard, you'll see, you'll get what you deserve if you work hard, essentially, And in cycling, that's a really that you can see that trajectory. If I work hard, I can see my results in real time. And I think because maybe it didn't work out quite like that for me in business, with my businesses, that actually this is quite fulfilling because I can literally see all of those years of being told work hard and you'll learn and you'll move up and you'll see progression. And here I can see that it's right in front of me, and I like that.
Well, maybe that's a really good time for us to head to a break and hear about the New Normal charity. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. So Ben, can you tell us about TNN and the outstanding work that Jack and yourself do?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, my dad died in 2016, and a year before he did, I'd met this kid called Jack. He had walked into my barbershop to get a haircut and sat in my chair, and we just started chatting. And we immediately connected on music and style and football, and we were both working class kids. Had really similar upbringings. And after about 20 minutes of this haircut, Jack said to me that his dad, who he had been talking about, his dad Dave, had actually died 2 years earlier. And it was a serendipitous moment because my dad Steve had just been diagnosed with a brain tumour the week before. And here I was chatting to this person who was just like me. And so after my dad died in 2016, and after Jack had a bit of a, he would call it a breakdown at the beginning of 2018, he came to me and he said, these conversations that you and I have about our dads, would you be interested in having them with anyone else? And I could see that my mate needed something.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, all right, yeah, sure, why not? Like, why don't we explore that? And he said, well, why don't we go to the hospices where our dads died? I said, no. I said, let's not do that. I said, let's do something around here. Let's do something local to London. It's what we know. And I had actually been in peer support in my mid-20s for anger management. So I went and did a year and a half of anger management when I was young. I've been in a relationship that had become really verbally abusive, or at least I had become really verbally abusive, and I decided that I needed to change. And yeah, whilst I was going through this process, I did one-on-one, and then it went into group. And when it went into group, it was just this really beautiful experience of being sat in a room with other men who were violent people, and we just spoke. And when we spoke, there was this shared commonality. And you listen to other people and you listen to their experiences, and you realise what they're saying, it resonates so much with you. And this commonality reduces that isolation and that loneliness, that feeling that I'm the only person who knows this. It makes you feel like you belong to something, like there are other people out there who understand you. but also it allows you to understand what you've been doing and why it's wrong and why it's bad and why it's hurtful and harmful to others, because you're listening to your stories play out through others. And so when I said to Jack, no, let's not go to the hospices, I had something like that group in mind, where I wanted to put other people in a room together like us. And so we found a space in North London in Angel, and we picked a date, the 21st of May 2018. And we spoke about it on our social media. We just told everyone, this is what we're going to do. Here's this room. We're going to be there. People can come down, and we're just going to talk about grief. We're just going to talk about the people that we love, the people that have died. Just together. That's it. There was no agenda really, apart from wanting to bring people together in this room.
Yeah.
And we posted about it and posted about it and posted about it, and so many people got in touch.
Amazing.
And then, when Jack says it's his only tweet that ever went semi-viral, but National Rail for some reason picked up on it. And loads of people commented on it on National Rail.
Okay.
So we had no idea who was going to turn up. So we bought so many biscuits, like so many biscuits. And we stood in this room, 7 p.m. on the 21st of May 2018, and by 7:05, 5 other people had walked in that room.
Awesome.
And we all made a cup of tea, and we sat down, and for the next 2 hours, we just spoke about the people that we missed.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the first ever meeting. That was the first ever good grief. And, a few months later, we came back, and a few months after that, we came back again. Then we found a new home. Then we became monthly, and then bi-weekly and weekly, and then the pandemic happened. And we took everything online. And then at the same time, other stuff was happening. We had the murder of George Floyd, which was a huge moment for Jack and I. It was a huge moment. And I've spoken about this in the US as well. And in the US, they were really surprised when I spoke about it in the way I did. But the murder of George Floyd really, for me, was the first thing that really cut through in British media. It was the first time that we really heard about police brutality, people of colour in North America. And obviously there were other cases of it, but this was a moment where we were all at home and we were seeing this play out on our TVs, on our phones, on our computers every single day. And I remember really reflecting on myself and my identity and who I was, and all of these other parts of myself, that ultimately contributed to my experience. And Jack and I spoke, and we realised that our experience maybe wasn't everyone else's experience.
Okay.
And from that moment, we started to work with other people in our community to create new spaces. So we created Black and Brown Good Grief for people of colour, Queer Good Grief for the LGBTQ plus community. It's complicated for people who had lost people to suicide or who have maybe been estranged.
Yeah.
Partner loss, student good grief, all of these meetings that ultimately started to acknowledge the nuances and experience that weren't just Jack and mine, two straight cis white men. There were other people with other identities that we needed to serve, and we were training people, and people were becoming hosts, and it was growing and growing and growing. And in 2021, one of our volunteers moved to Hong Kong and then started complaining to me that there were no meetings that she could go to because she was in Hong Kong. And I said, all right, well, make your own meetings.
Get on with it.
And we're now a charity in Hong Kong. We have around about 25 volunteers, I think, working over there.
Oh, that's amazing.
They run about they run about 10 meetings a month in Hong Kong. Yeah,
Jesus.
It's amazing. It is incredible. Then earlier this year as well, we founded in North America. So we launched across the Americas, and we're a charity in California. And in February, we'll be launching in-person meetings in Venice, and then later in the year in West Hollywood, Ojai, and the Bay Area. I think we currently run close to 30 meetings a month in the UK alone.
Wow.
So we run a lot of groups. Yeah, a lot of them are online. We still have some in-person ones that I run in central London, and all of the ones in Hong Kong are in person, and the ones that will be in California will all be in person as well. But yeah, we've incredibly, over the last 5.5 years, we've now hosted over 1,000 meetings to, I think, around 10,000 participants.
Jesus.
From over 26 countries in the world. I've sat on a call with people from Hong Kong, then people kind of scattered around Southeast Asia, someone who was in mainland China, and then someone who was in Libya.
Oh, wow.
And, we used to think it was crazy that people were coming from West London to East London. And I've sat on calls now with people who have set their alarms for 4 o'clock in the morning in Australia to get up and be in these meetings.
That's incredible.
The other day I hosted a call where I had 2 people in North America, one person in India, people across the UK, people across Europe. We're seeing people from Africa, from India. It's the reach of this is unbelievable. And currently we have 1 full-time member of staff and me who works part-time. And that's it. We've got 120 volunteers. And that's just what we do. That's just our meetings. In the other work that we do, which I'm really proud of, we work a lot in suicide prevention.
Okay.
So, our belief is, reducing isolation is reducing suicide. So this year alone, I've spoken on 2 panels for the government on suicide, suicide prevention. And, we're funded by other organisations to go into communities, already existing communities, and give them the tools to hold their own space, to hold their groups. This year we've worked with the elderly, we've worked with people in the trans community, neurodiverse. We've worked with people from different heritage, different identity, different backgrounds. People who are living in some of the most deprived parts of the country, deprived parts of London. Going into January, our January cohorts are so. What I'm proud of is the people we're reaching. The NHS doesn't reach them, big charities don't reach them, but we're reaching them and we're working with them, and I'm so proud of that.
Yeah.
And that's the work that we don't talk about, because we're talking about our meetings, but the other work we're doing is so important, and we've just developed as well. Now we've just developed a load of modules for education in workplaces around grief as well, which is so important. How many times do people lose someone and they go into work and their boss doesn't know how to speak to them, their manager doesn't know how to speak to them, and so now our focus as well is on educating corporates, getting people to understand how to communicate in grief. And it's ultimately just about community. It's about building community. It's about reducing isolation. It's about giving people a place to be able to go and speak, being vulnerable, being open, and feeling like they belong, like I did when I went into that anger management group.
So, it's really interesting what you say about, especially like the January group. So maybe this isn't even the forum to do it, but we're talking amongst friends. I had a really difficult part of my life. 7 years ago, I spent some time in hospital for my mental health because I wasn't doing great, and I was alone. I was very alone, and I thought I was on the right track, and I thought I was doing what I thought was right. And I'll be honest with you, my wife and I met probably about 5.5 years ago, and she was. If I didn't have her support network, I actually don't know if I'd be here now, because she was the one that really kind of two things, I think, made me face up to what I was living with, but also kind of made me face myself and be like, you know, this is what you are, this is how you're living, and maybe you move past that. She's very good at that, and she listens to all of our podcasts. I just want to say hi, Clarice, I love you. But Ben, maybe an extension of that, like you said, you do an incredible amount of work around your space, and you do some work with the NHS. And we spoke off podcast about, especially the mental health of people that are cycling, or it's the kind of the hidden thing, right? The cycling thing is, I need to be lighter. I need to be riding my bike way more. I need to be more committed. And is what is good? Where am I there? So, I mean, it's not to ask you the question, why is mental health important? But it's more of a, where do you stand with that? And especially with the new normal charity, which is, mainly focused on grief, but fundamentally mental health and cycling. Like, why don't you give us your thoughts on that? Because, you come at it from both sides, right?
Well, firstly, mental health is important. Understanding ourselves is important for a number of reasons. But for me, the main reason. So, the world we live in now is a tumultuous and difficult place. It's an incredibly lonely and isolating place, and it's a place that's wrought with trauma. And we as individuals are wrought with trauma. We experience so much trauma all the time. For me, healing is understanding who we are, where we come from, why we behave the way we behave, and how our behaviour and our actions, what those implications are. Now, this is key, because if we want to progress as a race, as a people, as humans, we have to explore ourselves. We have to understand ourselves. And in doing so, we create so much more capacity within ourselves to understand others. And that capacity, that compassion and that empathy collectively allows us to heal and progress and move forward and evolve. So our mental health isn't just important for us, it's also important for the good of all other people. I believe in all people, and I believe that we all have a right to one another. We all have a contract with one another to improve ourselves individually, to collectively prosper. So mental health is important for that. Our day-to-day well-being, of course, as well. Cycling is pretty bad for your mental health.
Yeah.
Because there are so many things that can make you think that you're not having a good day on the bike. Maybe your kit doesn't fit as well as it did a few days ago. Maybe, it's harder to turn the pedals than it was the last time you went out and run. Yeah. Maybe you ride your bike because you think you need to lose weight, or maybe you ride your bike because, you're running away from whatever it is that you're not going and speaking to a therapist about, or speaking to friends about, or your partner or your family, whoever it is. Cycling has so many toxic traits.
Yeah. And
one of the things that really concerns me is when people say, "Oh, cycling is my therapy."
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. The only therapy that is therapy is therapy.
My wife says the same thing. Yeah. The actual facts, like that's black and white. Yeah.
Right. That is black and white. And so using a sport, or using, a tool like cycling to try and improve your mental health, your movement and being active can improve your well-being. Speaking and being open and vulnerable about how you're feeling and what you're experiencing and what you have experienced is therapy.
Yeah.
And the two of them, along with other things, eating well, sleeping as much as you can, not overcommitting in things, these are the things that can improve your mental health and well-being generally. But using one of them as a tool to replicate all things that's not the answer.
No.
Very well said.
I agree.
Thanks.
Talking of, I guess, as we're talking about cycling, you've just recently done an epic bike ride for charity. Was it 600 kilometers in 25 hours?
It was 603.7 kilometers in 24 hours and 15 or 20 minutes, something like that.
Gross.
So, yeah.
What was your where do you even want to start with this? Highlights, lowlights?
Well, lowlights was the entire thing.
Yeah. We're now on this is now a cycling mental health podcast, so maybe we start with the lowlights and we raise ourselves up into it.
The lowlights were the middle of the night when I was hallucinating, and it had been raining for about 8 straight hours, and it's two of the boys had dropped out with hypothermia. There was just 2 of us left, and there was this moment where I'd been riding on the front for quite a bit, and I flicked my elbow, and moved to the side, and nothing happened, and I flicked it again, and I looked back, and my mate Tim just went, "I can't ride on the front."
Oh no!
Oh no!
And this is like 12:30 at night, and I was like, okay. And we saw each other, actually. Tim and I were the 2 who finished it, and I saw him on Sunday. We haven't spoken about it since. I've barely been able to think about him. But we spoke about it on Sunday, and he actually said to me, he said, I couldn't ride at the speed that you wanted to ride at that point. Okay. I just knew that I could sit on your wheel, and I knew that you wanted to ride a certain tempo. And so, Tim's a really experienced bike rider and bike racer, and so he knew what he could and couldn't do, and he knew what I wanted to do, and so he just let me ride. And we were fortunate enough that actually good friend of Tim's and a lovely man, Henry Furness, came and joined us at 2 a.m.
Amazing.
Which was just amazing. And he sat on the front for like 2.5 hours until another friend of ours, Tom, turned up, and then they started pulling turns, and and then loads of other people came along and started to give us a hand. But I think if you look at that last hour, I mean, this we were, because it was 20 hours and 9 minutes moving time. So
God,
it's not slow, but that last hour we were riding at about 36 k an hour average around Regent's Park after 19 hours already riding. Just trying to get, and like my friend Leo, who rides for Trash, he kept turning around and he kept looking at me and he was like, "How's the speed?" I was like, "Faster, faster, faster." And Tim was just going, "No, no, slower." And Tim would look away, and I'd just go, "Faster, faster." I just wanted to get off the bike. I was
you were done. You were done.
I hadn't. Yeah. And I hadn't listened to music for like 6 hours. I'd just been riding in silence around Regent's Park by that point for 6-7 hours. Like, and you're just, and I couldn't eat anything because I had like acid reflux in my chest, and I was just about able to manage a gel every hour and some water. And I was horrible. And there was this really, there was this really awful moment where Tim ate 2 bacon and egg sandwiches, and there was no hot food.
What? There's like, hi Tim, I hope you're listening to this. But at the same time, mate, what are you doing cycling 20 hours and then like doing scran that's like proper food?
Yeah. I mean, he was sat like at 7 a.m, sat in this fold up chair in the car park in Regent's Park, eating these 2 egg and bacon rolls with a cup of coffee, and I was just sat on the bonnet of his car eating a gel. And I was just like, "Can we just get back on the bike?" And he was just there with his second bap, his coffee. I was just like, "I just need to ride. I need this to be over." Yeah, it was just my genuine advice is like, don't do it. Don't ride that far.
Really?
Yeah. It sucks.
But Ben, how much money did you raise for charity?
I think we raised just under £8,000, so I'm really happy with that. And it was, it was for TNN as well, so it was for the new normal. So, You know, I can't honestly look. Tim and I did that ride. We were the ones who completed it. But Ollie and Jacob rode 400k, 450k each as well. You know, we had Ruben come along and Mouse as well from Knights of London, and both of those boys rode over 300k. You know, like that's a huge effort. And then everyone else who came along and helped us and supported and rode turns with us, you know, like gave us sweets or went and bought us pizza or whatever it was.
Little things.
Like, Tim and I did it. We did that distance, but everyone else did so much for us to make sure that we could. So it's amazing, you know. And all of the people who donated, like, you know, I'm so grateful for everyone who's come and supported us or supported us financially, and that it's amazing, you know. My knees were not so grateful, but you know, everything else, I'm you know, thank you to everyone who was involved.
So what's next for the charity? What's next for the new normal? With, you know, after the big fundraising, the big ride, what can people expect, and what should people look out for?
So I think this year is going to be a huge focus on that workplace training, like really starting to work alongside corporates. I mean, for us, you know, we believe that all people should have access to free mental health support. And so that's what our work is. You know, it's going into these communities, it's giving them the tools to be able to deliver those spaces. It's upskilling as many people as possible. I genuinely believe in an empathetic world. I passionate world, and so our work is dedicated to doing that. And you know, I think there is a lot more to come, but we're in a position at the moment where we need to understand how we grow sustainably. We grew so quickly because we were just responding to the needs of people, and now we're trying to grow sustainably. And so I think more of what we've been doing, but a lot of the work in the background. But I mean, if anyone's ever had a bad experience with somebody at work and thinks, hey, we could really do some grief work in this place, get in touch, give us a call, give me a shout.
Well, look,
it's a plug for our work.
Well, with the final plug for the Do Normal, maybe we head to section 3.
Welcome back, everybody. Now we're on to the quick Q&A, but we'll see how quick it is. So, Ben, you've spoken about riding in Regents and Richmond. What is more pro? What do you prefer?
The two parks. Yeah, neither. They're garbage. Both of them.
All right, go on, Ben.
Hot take.
Explain. Both garbage?
Go on. You know.
Yeah, they're both terrible. They're both awful, aren't they? Look, they're parks in central London. Neither of them are nice. They're full of traffic. There's too many cyclists. It's just carnage, it's chaos. And now as well, we've got the added risk of bike theft. So why do it?
So why do it?
You make a compelling argument.
You make a compelling. So when you're avoiding Regents or Richmond, where you can get your bike stolen and or get chopped off the wheel from other people, where are you going for coffee? I know that you do. You're a man for a conversation, hanging out with friends. Where are you going for a coffee? Where's your spot? Tell the crew.
Hucks in Walthamstow is the main place that we go for coffee. Also, as well, Ethos Bros in Essex. Yes. If you don't know it, it's like a fully vegan cafe. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Yeah, very good.
So, I was going to ask you about your dislikes in cycling, but you may have already told us. But what are your dislikes in cycling?
You
can list, just list if you've got many.
You can rant.
I don't think I have many. I wish the sport was more inclusive. Like, I think that is a real problem with the sport. I wish it was more inclusive. the barriers to entry are something that I really dislike. It should be something that anyone can do, and actually it's not. And this idea that cycling is free, or like, you know, outside is free, what a ridiculous notion, because it's such a horribly expensive sport at times. And they're the things I dislike. I think it's not inclusive enough. The barriers to entry are too high, and the kind of cost of the sport is just astronomical and stupid.
Fair. And I think also maybe the thing that we talked about last week when I popped in, the suffering part.
Mm.
I've come around on that now after thinking about it. But maybe it'd be good for you to articulate, because you're, you know, maybe more experienced in that than I am, really.
Yeah, I just don't think this idea of suffering or being in pain is a particularly healthy thing. You know, we all do things that are very, very difficult, physically, mentally challenging. But actually, suffering is a really awful message to put out there, and this idea that we should, you know, find ourselves in some really hard, horrible, dark places is a really toxic thing for the sport.
Yeah, that's a good point. Speaking, but maybe to completely go the other end. Speaking of non-toxic things that should be embraced. Thank you, Andre. Ben, the first time I, you know, you and I have gone back and forth on Instagram, you know, carrier pigeon, etc., etc. But the first time that you and I properly had a conversation was actually when I was in the White Bibs, the famous White Bibs Regent Day. That, you know, this is coming out in March.
How many people did you meet that? Mate, how many people did you meet that day?
When you're a beacon of hope, like Superman, people come towards you almost in a magnetic sense. Ben, your thoughts on White Bib shorts? We spoke off podcast, but maybe we'll give you some rope. Are you wearing them? Are you going to be wearing the Spin Cycle skin suit for the social that we're doing, PINTs and PAVÉ, 31st of March, I believe? Are you going to be wearing White Bib shorts, or can we see you in White Bib shorts potentially?
Do you remember Johnny Burrell?
Oh, was he like punk?
Yeah, he was Johnny Burrell.
No, he was not.
Indie guy.
No, he was the lead singer of Razorlight, who definitely would not have punk band.
In those shit white jeans.
Yeah. Should we leave
Next
that
question?
On
so that's a yes.
So that's a yes. Go on.
So the final question is cobbles or mountains? Riding them, watching them.
Riding up mountains is just, it's like, I couldn't think of a much better way to spend my time, to be honest. It's a beautiful thing. Cobbles, I'll ride them, but I'd much rather go uphill.
Fair. Well, we're a white short, cobble friendly podcast. So, Ben, it's been great. Look, Ben, mate. Thank you massively for being on our podcast. It really means a lot. I think
it's a pleasure. Yes.
No, I think fundamentally what you're doing is incredible, and you know, we're recording this on December the 13th, so you've just gone over your 1,000-meter milestone. As you said, that's over 10,000 people that have been able to have that conversation. I think that, you know, my own, you know, journey through mental health, just even having a friendly person that you see on a weekly basis, or someone that you can count on, or a group you can count on, it's super crucial, right? Be it someone that you meet regularly, or just being able to talk to someone. It'd be great if you can let us know, where can people reach out to you, how can people get involved in the new normal, and maybe you see us out on the show.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I mean, you know, I just want to endorse what you've just said there. Like, we all need a place to speak, no matter who we are or how, mentally resilient or tough we believe we are, it's irrelevant. We need a place to speak. We need a place to be able to just share what we're experiencing. And it's important. It's important to have that. It's important to have community. It's important to have someone who will just listen, whether that's a therapist, a partner, a friend, whoever it is. You need to find that space. And with the New Normal, we do provide that. And you can get in touch with us, find us on Instagram at TNN Charity, or head over to our website, thenewnormal.com, and reach out if you want to support us in any way, if you want to volunteer, if you want to come to a meeting and you want to know a little bit more about them, whatever it is, just get in touch.
Amazing. Ben, thank you very much. And I'll see you in white shorts. Bye.
You will be in them, I will.
Thanks, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.